Hi, everyone. Excited to get started here. Hi, all. Hi, all. Molly, I hear you, but I don't see you yet.
I see you.
Okay, it's a good sign.
Let me see. How about no? No, wait. How about now?
Mm. If you see Molly, let me know in the comments.
Does anyone see me? Oh, they see me.
Okay, that's I don't know why that is. Okay,
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh well.
Yep,
They're
I'm
seeing
just
me.
being okay. So we're gonna go with it. And you see me.
Yes, I see you.
Okay, awesome. Um, just okay. I'm burning because all I wanted to do was meet you in person, the famous Mollie Tawil.
Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness.
in person to an extent, I guess.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, so. Nice
um,
to see you and meet you.
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I think you're a very beloved person. Everybody that I told that I was doing an Instagram live video was like, "Oh, Molly, like we love Molly." So really, we're honored to have you on, and really appreciate you coming to share your story tonight. We're going to be talking about hot topic, getting pregnant after 35, and everything that entails and comes with from an emotional perspective, from your personal perspective, and then we're going to have Dr. Brian Levine on to talk about it from a medical perspective.
Okay.
Sort of that age-old question of, the scene from My Cousin Vinny when Marissa Tomei says, "My biological clock is ticking."
The
Um,
story.
so that's
The
the
story.
story,
That's
right?
how it begins. Yes. Gosh.
So just to give a little background on SBH fertility, we help couples across the reproductive and maternal health issues, everything including infertility, pregnancy loss, birth trauma, PMADS, which is perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, NICU stays, and much more. Right now, we are running a number of support groups that are closed, but hopefully we're going to open registration again in a few weeks. So we have a secondary group a primary group that's happening right now. Power Moms, which is our for women who are pregnant or just had a baby and are feeling more anxious or depressed. And Fearless Moms, and that's for those who are worried about a future pregnancy because of an issue with a prior pregnancy. Um, and we also have Empowering Moms, which is for grandmothers and grandmothers in waiting, who want to better support their children who are dealing with infertility and loss. That's been fantastic. And we have another session in March, so look out for that. We also have our Libra 101 course coming up in March, which is incredible, free,
Unbelievable.
can't miss it.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, just in general, we're here for you. We're here to hold your hand through the journey wherever you are at, whatever age you're at. And just to know you're not alone. And we have tons of resources for you, and you won't regret it. Okay, so tonight, like I mentioned, we are talking about getting pregnant after 35. And I think for a lot of people, and I know we discussed this, Molly, in preparation for tonight, but I think it's like a very different perspective than those who are maybe on the younger side, whether you have children yet or not.
Yes.
You're more mature, you're at a different life stage. whether that's you're advanced in your career, advanced in your family building, just advanced in years, more life experience. And that kind
Yes.
of comes with an increased feeling of helplessness. Like, I'm so used to being in control and running my home or running my business or running whatever I'm running. Like now, this new and overwhelming piece is really
And
not.
the one that you're waiting for your whole entire life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely acute for the primary infertility people because they most likely got married later in life and they're like, I'm already feeling so behind and how do I play catch up now? But I also have this fertility thing going on. And then for the secondary infertility people, I think it's a lot of shame of how can I even feel guilty? I already have children at home. Um, you know, um, I'm so busy with them. Maybe I don't even deserve to do this for me and for my future family and however I would like to grow it. Um, and I think there's a little bit more pride in general. At the age, we are more sure of ourselves. We have more confidence, and um, unfortunately, pride sometimes gets the best of us in that way. Um, so that's just my intro piece about why I feel this topic is so different and like for putting medical aside, like the emotions around it are so different and so acute. And I would love to hear from you about your journey. And yeah, go ahead, please take it away. Tell us about you
Uh,
and how you got here.
So I got married at 42, which I was a working woman, working for many, many years, living in the city at the time for a few years. Always independent, always, had my own things going on. I never felt like I was missing out, sort of say. I mean, I always wanted to get married, but I never felt that I was less or feel bad for myself. I always had something going on, whether it was working or taking care of my family, my mother, my whatever it may be. My dad was sick. There was always stuff going on. But I finally found my person at 42, which happened very fast and unexpected, to say the least. And I remember him telling me, I'm sure you want children. And I said, yes, of course I want children. A child, I definitely want something to call my own, something I waited my whole life for. And I was, pretty much very healthy, got my period monthly, 28 days. I was like clockwork. I felt like there was nothing gonna stir me. I was gonna be fine. And I got married in July, and I remember Mollie Haber at the time, who I was very close to. She said, take the first few months off. Don't worry about it. And I got married. I have two kids, an 18 now 18 and 21-year-olds, and so I had like a built-in home already, pretty much. I got married July 14th, and July 15th, it was a home, literally. Friday night
Amazing.
dinners and
Wow.
whatever. So I had this built-in home, but of course, I wanted to have a baby of my own. And so the first few months, I was not really, worried, whatever. I said, "Well, it's
Mhm.
going to happen. It's going to happen." Prior, just to go back in time, rewinds, I did back when I was 36, I'm going to say. I think it was 36. It might have even been 37. I was trying to look it up.
Mhm.
I'm speaking to one of my good friends, and she said, why don't you freeze the eggs? Why don't you freeze your eggs? I said, yeah, I don't know. Okay. Like I didn't even understand the whole concept of it, honestly.
Mhm.
But I went along with it. I did do it. I was living in the city at the time, so it was easy to go back and forth. And I did, the whole system, the pills, the medication, the injections, whatever it may be. Okay, insurance policy, done. Didn't think much of it. now I'm married and I'm trying every month. And obviously, like, there's so much. I was working full time. I was, like I said, I had a household already. I was going on with my
Mhm.
normal life, but in the back of my head, I'm like, why, okay, this month, you wait, this month. And, it's hard. It is definitely hard. There's times when I was anxious and, you have to go on with regular life and you have to perform and you have to be a mother to two children that do need me, still need me, and a
Mhm.
husband that's new at the time. And I'm just getting used to everything. And now I'm putting this pressure of having a baby.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't stop. I just said, okay, I know it's going to happen. I always wanted to be a mom. I had nephews from the age of 7 years old. I was always around children. I was always, just that person. And
A favorite aunt.
favorite, yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
And then it came to a point where it was 4 or 5 months in, and I was kind of, which I think you told me was like a chemical pregnancy. I wasn't sure, but
Hmm.
I kind of held a pregnancy for a little while. And I said, okay, whatever. I didn't even tell anyone because I'm like, okay, it's early. I didn't even take a pregnancy test at that time. And then I
Oh.
remember feeling like a little crampy or whatever it was. And I remember seeing something in like something where I was like, maybe 12 days later, after I was
Hmm.
supposed to get my period at the time. And I remember feeling this feeling of, oh my gosh, what, like, why is this happening? Why, like, I was getting nervous at this point, only because I was like, I'm older. I
Yeah.
don't have that time. The
Yeah.
whole thing of being older and people always saying, are you going to have a kid? Are you going to have a baby? Are you going to, and you're 42. And I remember when I was, okay, like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I
And
thought it
and
was
they
much
and they
easier.
as I was going to say, they do that even at 25, right? When
Yeah,
you're
no,
married for you. So
and it's
I'm
nothing
no, I'm
against
sure
people.
it was said in front of, said to you very often, even though
Yes, it
it's
was.
never
And out of
okay.
goodness, and always out of goodness, always because they
Hmm.
wanted to see me, and I knew that. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you're dealing with, like I said, running a business, working full time, and making dinners, and children. Going to my daughter at the time was a freshman in a new
Hmm.
school, and just a lot of things going on
Hmm.
that first year that I had to be involved in. But yet, this was also a side priority to me.
Yeah.
So it was, my husband was very supportive. Always, he was there for me, but he knew, all right, you're going to take this, and whatever you need to do, you need to do. And then I
Hmm.
remember talking to Mollie Haber, and I said, what's going on? Anything going on? I said, no, whatever. She goes, you have your eggs. I said, you know what? And I remember saying at that point, I really didn't want to use them. I don't know why, but I just didn't want to. I felt like I'm healthy. There's no reason that I can't get
Yeah.
pregnant. There's no reason. Like I could do this. I've done everything in my life. Whatever I ever wanted or needed, I got for the most part.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
important to me.
Yeah.
And I was kind of stubborn when she said it. Like I said, in my brain, I'm like, I don't want to. I just don't
Mm.
want to.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where I said,
And it was a backup plan, right? In your brain when
it
you did
was
it, you were like,
in my brain. I said, okay, along the road, maybe if I had, like I didn't even know what it was. It was just, I always knew it was like insurance to me. That's what it
hmm,
was.
hmm.
So
Yeah.
I never thought of it as the first route ever.
Right. Right.
So I
So
then
you,
called Extend Fertility at the time, who is where I froze my eggs.
hmm.
And I called, and you go through these motions and paperworks and whatever it may be. And blood work, you have to go every single day and check, and.
Yeah.
And I remember I met with the doctor at the time, and he's like, all right, we're going to do an IUI,
Hmm.
which I said, okay, thinking, okay. great.
Like you were
Didn't-
optimistic about it.
I was optimistic because I'm saying, okay, this is like the easy route. I'm going that route, but okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thinking, bam, I'll be okay. This is it. I'll be pregnant in 9 months
Right.
from, whatever.
Right.
Literally, I remember saying these things like, okay, we can't go away here, but okay.
Yeah.
And of course, I had two failed IUIs, and you have to wait in between. I thought it was three, but I think it was only two. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember at that point I said, okay, that's it. By the
Mm-hmm.
second IUI, it was months, and obviously, it seemed longer than it really was. Looking
Yeah.
back, I got pregnant in August, which was a year after I got married. But at the time, every month seemed like
It was
you have to
devastating.
wait, you have to, but yeah, it's like a long process. So,
Yep.
um, but after the two failed IUIs, I said, I remember speaking to my friend again, who I was very in touch with, because she dealt with IVF and she got married older at the time. And I had a cousin also who was going through infertility, who was married for 3 years, and she was also dealing with it. So I was always talking to these two people back to back here and there, and Molly Haber always,
Mm-hmm.
um, always monthly. But I do remember at that point, I said, okay, I'm just going to use my eggs. At
Mm-hmm.
that point, I told the doctor at the time, I said, I just want to go through with it. I want to just, that's it. I'm ready. I don't want to wait any longer. I was getting nervous at this point, and I ended up going, and at the time I froze. It was 9 eggs at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was like a ton. But knowing now, it really wasn't a ton.
Yeah.
I think it was like I had 12 and then three didn't make it or something along
Yeah.
those lines. And
Makes sense.
I remember him telling me, and he goes, listen, there's a chance that this won't work, and you might have to go through, And I said, no, it's going to work. It's going to work. I know it's going to work. I remember saying, I was very always my whole life. One thing about me, I don't know if it was just instilled in me, but I always was positive. I always knew I'm going to get married at some point. I am going to get married. I am going to have a baby. And I said, my father passed away. I said, I have two kids. Like, I just know I'm going to have a baby. And he's like, listen,
Mm.
there's a chance that this might not work. It might not. And I said,
Yeah.
okay. So we went through the whole procedure. They give you medication and the whole 9 yards. And I remember just saying, "Oh my God!" Like they did the whole retrieval, and it held.
A transfer, you say, yeah.
The transfer. I'm sorry, the transfer. It held, and they used the strongest one, obviously, which is my Saul now. But
Nice.
it was it was scary. It's a scary moment in life because there are times you feel so helpless. Like you said, you feel like I could do anything, and then you feel so helpless in your own body, and
Mm-hmm.
it's scary. But right nowadays, there's so many things. Like I felt so fortunate to have all these tools and all these, to be able to hold a baby healthy. I was able to play tennis my whole pregnancy. I was able to exercise. I had a very, thankfully, very easy pregnancy. Um, and obviously they put me they didn't even need to put me in a high risk, but they did end up putting me in a high risk with a high risk doctor at the time. And and that really, I mean, sums it up for the most part of
Mm.
for the most part.
Amazing. Amazing. It is miraculous. And I remember when we spoke, you said it was really just one embryo that they had the
It was
most
one embryo.
confidence, and there's a lot of pressure there. Some people call it
Which I didn't even realize
right, right,
when I was going through it. I think if I knew
hmm
what I knew now,
right,
I would have been petrified. Like I probably
right,
wouldn't have moved out of my bed and
right,
done
right,
anything.
right.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I- yeah.
amazing, amazing. Thank you, Hashem.
Thank you
You
for
want
checking
to,
those
can you
times.
share a little bit about how SBH fertility helped you? I know you said you were in touch with Molly a lot, but how
Yes.
else did you find?
Well, they were really like I can't tell you, Molly Haber. I spoke to her anytime I needed her, any moment. She's the busiest person I know. She's in every field, and I'm like, how is she answering my text at like 6 in the morning, whatever it may be? She
Mhm.
was there for me every month. Anytime I had to do a procedure or go into the city, I had to like go into the city at 6 in the morning. They would send me packages, mani pedis, just a blanket, slippers, whatever it may be. They were always there. Like they would send me. I remember I had every post-it that they ever gave me. Like I would
Nice.
get it right before Shabbat, and it'd be like, "We're here if you ever need us." But I can't tell you. Like I remember every time I got that little card, I would cry. Like I remember it was right before, and I just like teared because I was like, "How lucky am I to have all these tools, you know what I'm saying, just to be there, and a whole family of people." I was doing injection, I had to, my whole pregnancy, I really had to do injections, obviously,
Right.
to keep whatever. And it would be Kippur, it would be whatever it may be, Shabbat, Sukkot. I would walk there and I'm like, they would be there. Snow, whatever it was, they were there for me. If I needed someone, if I was in Jersey for the weekend, they, would set me up with someone in Jersey that was in walking distance, if it was Shabbat or if it was a holiday or whatever. But, they truly, truly, I thank God I also had my friends and my
hmm
cousin who
hmm
was working with me also, but to know that these people, they were strangers to me. Like I would walk into these people's homes like with the needles and the things. They're like, come here, come onto the couch. I'm like, okay, So it was very special. Very, very special.
Awesome, awesome. I know you did a yoga session that I remember you
Yes.
mentioned. Um,
Yes, with
awesome.
Terry Harari. I
Yes,
remember
yes.
it was right after we did it, and she was like, I know her my whole life, and all of a sudden I'm walking into her house. She's like, "What?" Like I'm like, we couldn't believe it. Yeah,
Amazing.
and then I did yoga my whole pregnancy. Also, I did breath
Awesome.
work. I did all things to kind of help me have an easy 9 months as best as I could.
Amazing. Your
Yeah.
your your story is extremely inspiring, and I'm very moved. I know I heard it already, but I'm still very moved. Um, and I just wondering if you have anything that you would want to impart on to somebody else who may be going through something similar, and something that you would tell them to give them a little
I
chizik.
can't tell you how much because I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. God is Hashem is big. He's big and he could do anything. I don't care what you think, he could do anything. And if you talk to him every single day, wake up and say, you're here with me, and you're going to get me through this day. I'm going to see a happy baby on the other side. I'm going to have a healthy baby. Just see yourself with the baby. Just envision everything positive, 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 positive. I read, I remember when I was pregnant, there was not one day, there was a book, Ore Banim, that
Hmm
I think Molly Haber gave me, I
Yes,
think,
yes, it's
that I
in our
actually gave to
packages.
a
Yes.
few different people. And I think my friend also gave it to me. But there was a few, stuff to read along the way, when you're
hmm
1 month, 3 months, whatever. And it was like a Bible to me. Really, 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 every single day I prayed, and I remember just saying like, I said it in English. It didn't matter,
hmm
English, Hebrew, and I just really spoke to God, and I said, please, like, just get me through this. You could do anything. You got me to this point, and just never give up hope. Believe it or not, your body, it's just a number. It really is just a number. There's 20-year-olds that are, that have a hard time. There's 30. It is just a number. Yes, your bodies are older. Yes, it's a little harder, but just believing yourself, and listen, there's a lot of, hiccups along the road. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
There was times where, yes, of course, you're in the car crying to yourself and have to compose yourself, or you're going into a meeting, or, you have to pick up the kids or whatever it may be. But you got it. You got this. Whatever it is, you got it. And even if it takes, I know people deal with longer periods and shorter and whatever. You have a team of people around, and there's so much nowadays that, thank God, we have so
Yeah.
much,
Hmm.
which 50 years ago they didn't have that. But
Even 10,
SBH,
even 5.
I
Yeah.
know, and every year there's so much more and more.
Yeah.
And there's listen, like I said, I remember saying, like, I gave birth, I ended up getting pregnant a year after, and I said, God really watched over me. I had 2 kids from my husband's kids that are my kids now, obviously. And, they needed me. Their dad just got married. They lost their mom and whatever it may be. And I needed to be there that year. If I just ran into a pregnancy right away, it would have been, so, like,
It
I
was it
knew
was
that,
really sha'a tova.
yes, it really, really was. It really was.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Molly, thank you,
So,
thank you, thank you for
very welcome.
sharing. I,
Thank
I
you for
wish
having me.
I just want to like give you a hug, and I'm sure everybody here feels the same, and they really love you from before you even came on. So this is really
Uh,
putting it over the top. Good luck. You're going to be famous tomorrow in The Butcher. I always tell people that.
I guess
Um,
I'm gonna call in my order then.
yeah, please,
I'm kidding.
please call on your order tomorrow. Really, we appreciate you coming on, and looking forward to speaking again.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks,
We're,
everybody.
we're going to invite Dr. Brian Levine on now to talk about the medical side of getting pregnant after 35. Let's see if we have him on. Hi, Dr. Levine, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Think I'm great. That was amazing.
That's a great story. And thank you so much for being so bold and so brave to share your story.
Of
Yeah,
course.
that was not easy, not easy. Molly, you're welcome to stay on or go off. No pressure either way.
Okay. I don't even know how to go off. That's the thing. I don't. Is it bad if I say one? I'm so
No, it's
old,
fine.
guys.
You can
I
push the
can't.
X. I think you push the X in the corner and it goes out.
Should I stay on, or is it a pain if I stay on?
No, I don't know how big the screen is with you there
All right.
or
So
not there.
I'm gonna
So
go off. I'm gonna go off
okay,
and I'll watch
Okay.
it.
okay,
Okay.
okay.
Bye,
Enjoy.
guys. All right.
Dr. Levine, thank you. I think we really wanted to get that dual perspective of that personal and more of an emotional perspective on getting pregnant after 35, which comes with its unique challenges. But then we'd love to hear from you a little bit about what happens on a woman's 35th birthday. Like, how much does that clock really expire and go off? What can we expect? And I guess this term advanced maternal age, it's better than geriatric because I don't know if they still use that
Right.
term. But talk to us a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, thank you for having tonight. I think it is so important to meet people where they are. And these
Hmm.
conversations are being had in the privacy of people's own homes, or where they feel most comfortable. And for some people, they're sitting on the couch, and some people, they're sitting in the bedroom by themselves. And so, no matter who
Hmm.
you are and what you're hearing tonight, you should just know there's a lot of people out there to support you, including this amazing organization. So,
I apologize. I didn't introduce you well enough. This is Dr. Brian Levine from CCRM. You're one of the founders there. Yes, I apologize. I don't have the bio in front of me. Dr. Levine, your reputation precedes you. When we told people that you were coming on tonight, it was like the best doctor. He saved my life. I can't even tell you. And of course, we always speak so highly of you, and our clients love you. So It's
Well, thank
really
you.
our honor to have you on. I know you are the top of this field, so we really appreciate your time, and we love our doctors. So
Thank
I just wanted to give that little piece. I apologize that I just went straight into it. I'm like ready. I'm ready. So yeah. So going
well
back,
that
going back to where we were.
that
What happens on the 35th birthday? Talk to me.
so that intro is very kind. But I have to say that it's called practicing medicine because we get better with time, right? None of us are perfect at this job. And one of the things that you learn from doing this job, which I've been doing now for nearly 15 years, is that 35 is a fake number.
Mhm.
In fact, you will never be as young as you are today, no matter what age you are. And if you're 35 or 32 or 42, you may not be ready to have a family just yet. Of course, we have other things we can do to help you protect and preserve your fertility. And we just heard an amazing story about why you should freeze your eggs when you're ready to freeze your eggs. But we've pretty much all been trained by our mothers and our friends to be deathly afraid of your 35th birthday. In fact, many of us think that something happens on your 35th birthday, which is that you turn into a pumpkin, and that all of a sudden you hear a hissing noise as your ovaries just start shriveling away. And that as the days go by, the eggs will go down, and that before you know it, you're going to wake up one day in menopause. And that's just not true. What's true about 35 is that if you look statistically, it's when people start to have problems. But it's not when everyone has problems. And you could be 35 and very fertile, and you could be 35 and having a real problem. So
Mhm.
the truth of the matter is that when someone starts turning 28 years old, we start to see problems with their fertility. We start to see changes with their fertility, and we start to see that some of their numbers change.
Mhm.
When someone turns 32, that's the next place where we start seeing more changes. At 32 years old, we start to see some changes that happen, including a little bit of a lower AMH potentially, or a slightly lower egg count. And by 35, we start to see changes. And at 35, that's when we start to see the problems with miscarriages. When
Mhm.
people hit 35, that's when we start to see the chromosomal problems. Now, where does this actually come from? Because that's the real question. Where did this number of 35 come from? And the answer is it came from research in the late 60s when we started following a population of women to say, when do they have miscarriages? And that's when we saw it. It was around the age of 35 was that we saw a higher incidence. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get pregnant at 35. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean you're going to have trouble at 35. It just means statistically, 50% of pregnancies could have a chromosomal problem. And that's why many people seek help earlier than trying for 6 months or a year.
Right. So for me, it's common knowledge, but I always tell it is the rule of the land, right? That we wait a year under 35 if there's no other issues, and only 6 months after 35. Is that still the law of the land around here? And why is that?
So find me a Jewish mother who's going to let her daughter wait a year because I've never met her, right? Like it's just not going to happen. Um, but truth be told, when people are going through this infertility journey, and I call it a journey because no one has a straight line, right? Everyone has their own challenges. You just heard an amazing narrative about someone else's challenges. When someone's going through it, there are certain timelines that we say. So under the age of 35, trying for a year without success is defined as infertility. And over 35, trying for 6 months without success is defined as infertility. But guess what? That's good for insurance companies. That's
Mm.
not good for you. And actually, the terrible term of geriatric and elderly pregnancies, 35 and 40 respectively, are just terms for insurance companies. They're actually not terms about anything medically relevant whatsoever. Just before she made a comment about being high risk because she was pregnant at 42. You're not high risk at 42. You're high risk if you have a high risk problem in your pregnancy. But we live in New York. So, to me, the youngest patient I'm going to see tomorrow is a 42-year-old actually. And so its age is just a number. And I tell everyone when you have data and you have a doctor or a team who's data driven, you can achieve anything.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the shift, but is there sort of more of a drop at a certain point, and have you know when it's going to happen for you?
Great. So, I always tell people first, let's define what trying means, right? Like, let's go back to the basics here a little bit. So, people say that, I've been trying for a year without success. And I'll never forget, I had this amazing couple who came to see me, and they were Christian and they were very religious. And they said every Sunday after church, they have sex and they haven't gotten pregnant in the last year. I was like, that's not trying. That's literally just scheduling sex to have it on every Sunday once a week. What we do know is that trying is specifically when you think you're ovulating or know you're ovulating and having intercourse around that time period. Now, for some patients, they can actually say that they're trying for a year, but if they have what we call mikvah infertility, where literally either they're going to mikvah too early or too late, they may have never tried once because the timing would have been off the whole time. And for other couples, they may not know that the guy has zero sperm or low sperm or bad sperm or sperm abnormalities. So they might be trying this entire time, but not effectively. But you have to give patients some sort of timeline to understand what they are doing, so at least they can set their own barometers for when they want to ask for help. And what I say to patients is that when you turn 28, that's when you start to see your cycle might change. Most women at 20 years old are still on birth control, so they actually don't even see the symptoms, right? We have to remember many people can be on birth control for skin, for acne, hormonal regulation, weight regulation. There's many reasons to be on birth control, not just contraception. But regardless of the reason why you're on birth control, it can mask the symptoms of changes of your cycle. And that's a big deal. What we do know is that as you get older and your egg count goes down, your chance of problems go up. And that chance of problems is the miscarriage part. So, I'm trying to dance around it, but to not answer your question directly, which is there an age when there's a cliff? And the answer is no, it's a continuum. But the age groups we talk about are 28, 32, 35, 37.5, 39, 41, and 42 and above. And after 42, we kind of just lump everyone together to say, we're going to give you the full court press and we're going to get you pregnant.
Wow, it's a lot of differentiation and much more than I would have thought. Could you tell us a little bit about egg quality and egg quantity and what matters more and, how is it tested?
Yeah. So we have a really good and a really bad test for testing egg count. And it's the exact same test. It's called AMH. So AMH, or anti-Mullerian hormone, came out when I was in my residency, so back in 2004. And this test we thought was the be-all, end-all. And for those people, I'm 46. So I would say for the people who are a little bit older than me, people who are about 50, remember that the fertility doctor used to torture people by saying, come in on day 2 or day 3 of your cycle and you have to get your blood work done. And if you're servicing the Orthodox community and you get your period on Shabbat, it's a big problem because you're not going to be able to come the next day to get your blood tested. And people would freak out and they would melt down and be like, oh my gosh, I don't know my FSH. Well, we don't do that anymore. We pretty much now just check AMH, which means anti-Mullerian hormone or measure of ovarian reserve. And AMH is made by the smallest little follicles that are within your ovary, and it kind of tells you how much gas is in the tank. Here's the problem. It tells you nothing about the quality of the eggs. So for example, if let's just say, it's too cold in New York and you're like, screw it, I'm going to Boca. So you go to Boca and you go to the airport and you go to Hertz and you say, I need to rent a car and I'm going to go visit my friends in Miami. They said, great, go to spot number 3. It has a full tank of gas. Well, if they give you a pickup truck with a full tank of gas, you might need to refill it along the way. But if they give you, like a Honda or an Accord or something that's a very efficient car, a full tank of gas might get you further. AMH is just like the tank of gas. It doesn't tell you the performance of the vehicle. It just tells you how much reserve you have there. The better marker of what your actual egg quality is either in the laboratory when you do IVF or when you do egg freezing, what the eggs look like, or your actual pregnancy performance when you actually try to get pregnant on your own, if you're successful or not.
Right. And can AMH change over time? Like, can it improve? And how does that work, right? So if I'm seeing what my reserve is, my reserve can change.
So AMH is a terribly, terrible test. Because if you're on birth control, it could be super low. So we see this all the time, right? Women who are on birth control for hormonal regulation, all of a sudden they get their AMH checked and they're shocked at how low it is. Take them off birth control for 2 or 3 months and it might just come back. Or your AMH might be falsely elevated and you might do 1 month, get a test of 11, and then next month you get a test of 14. And the following month you get a test of 9 because it's actually not very accurate at the higher end of the test. But I have to share a story with you because it happened today. So there's a patient who I today got to graduate from my clinic who is pregnant. Now, this woman came to me, a lovely woman, came to me like the other story that she met the love of her life at 40. And at 40 years old, she started trying. And after trying for a year, she got pregnant. And then she went to that 10-week visit at her OBGYN, and there was no heartbeat. Now, what many of us know is that OBGYNs space out that first visit because statistically you're going to miscarry before then. So they don't want to register you and get all the prenatal stuff going and get your hopes up if it's not a successful pregnancy, right? They wait for Mother Nature to take hold. So this woman had this awful 10-week loss. She ended up having to have a DNC, which means they had to remove the contents from her uterus, and that's a surgical procedure. And then she ended up having a crazy autoimmune attack. And she ended up getting thyroiditis, which means her thyroid got inflamed. And she ended up developing something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which we see all the time with patients. It's incredibly common. Well, it ends up that this woman had such a bad thyroid attack that she went so hyper and hypo that her endocrinologist couldn't really manage her. So there was lots of meds, lots of trial and error, and it took her nearly 6 months till she got her thyroid in control. She then goes to her endocrinologist. This is really weird. As you're managing my thyroid, I haven't had a period. In fact, I haven't bled since this DNC. So the endocrinologist goes, look, I'm not a reproductive endocrinologist. Go see Brian Levine. He'll figure it out. He'll figure out what's going on and he'll let me know. So she comes to my office and she says to me, I had this DNC and I haven't bled since my DNC. And of course, this is before ChatGPT existed. So she's convinced either she has Asherman syndrome, which means she has scar tissue in her uterus, or that like something else more sinister is going on. And I check her levels and she's in menopause. Literally, her FSH is over 70.
Wow.
Her AMH is undetectable.
Wow.
And I literally had to say, and she goes to me, I'm having these hot flashes, but I think it's because my thyroid is off. And she thought the hot flashes that she was having was her thyroid dysfunction. So she never reported them to her endocrinologist. And I said to her, what you didn't realize is that those hot flashes that you were having was actually your menopausal symptoms. So I sat her down and I said to her, we got to do something and we got to try. So I put her on birth control for 10 days to try to break the cycle, to bring her FSH back down. And then I gave her the oldest, safest fertility drug that we know of, called Clomid. And I gave her this $5 pill that, you can get at Dwayne Reed or Rite Aid. It's super inexpensive. I gave her Clomid for 5 days. And I said, you know what? No one has ever regretted doing the full court press. Let's do an IUI for you and your husband. His sperm was okay. But I said, let's just time it the right way, wash the sperm to it. First IUI, that's her son.
Amazing.
Ends up, her son, she delivers. Gives birth, no period, menopause symptoms again. Came back to me at 44. I did the Clomid, the birth control Clomid thing again. No. And today, she just graduated from my clinic, pregnant with her second baby.
No, I have chills. That's the best story. That's crazy.
So the reason I tell you this story is for a couple of reasons. First, she didn't do IVF. Just because you have a low egg count doesn't mean you have to do IVF. And I hope everyone is listening here. Just because you have a low egg count, it doesn't mean it's going to be a $25,000 adventure. Second, you need to understand that the KISS principle works. Keep it simple, silly. What was her problem? She wasn't ovulating. We made her ovulate. And sometimes that's all you have to do. And third, just because of a low egg count doesn't mean the quality is not there. I saw a picture of the first kid today. He's adorable. This pregnancy today is going to be just as cute. It doesn't mean anything if you have a low number. It just means you should talk to a doctor to get help.
Awesome. Wow. I mean, miraculous, but also modern medicine is miraculous. I was telling someone today, it's when you see God's hand, right? When these type of things. What question, I guess a little off topic, but is there anything that you would recommend after age 35 in terms of lifestyle changes or nutrition? Like, is there something that kind of gives you an edge up, or is this really like just come to the doctor and we'll figure it out after?
So I believe that no matter what your outcome is, you always want to believe that you put your best foot forward. So imagine that pregnancy is a marathon. Now, many people in our community will say they love being pregnant. But look, my wife hated it. She was
Okay.
miserable. Like, she was not happy at all. She had hyperemesis. She was throwing up.
Worst, worst.
My wife,
We do a lot of HG support. You could tell her to call us.
so my wife was a patient of Dr. Lauren Fite, who's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Lauren just held her hand the entire time and like completely got her through this hyperemesis. But my wife was not happy. But there are many
Mm-hmm.
women who say, how can I try to have the best pregnancy possible? And I tell them, you wouldn't run a marathon without training. So pretend that pregnancy is your marathon and train for it, which means try to eat a healthy lifestyle. So try to adopt a Mediterranean diet. Try to limit the sugar, try to limit the carbs, limit the rice, limit the heavy dairy, limit the sugar, because we know sugar is inflammatory. We tell people that all the time now, if you're not in your ideal weight, that's okay. Get to your ideal weight. Get where you're going to feel comfortable and happy. If that means you're going to take Manjaro or Ozempic or one of those things for a couple of months, mazel tov. Like, do it. Like, feel your best when you're going to potentially feel your worst.
Mhm.
And most importantly is when you're over the age of 35, be responsible and do your health checks. So I push patients to go get mammograms. I push patients that if they're due to get their first colonoscopy, do it before you're pregnant. I tell people if you don't have an internal medicine doctor, go see your internist, get your cholesterol checked. Do all of these things so that you can set yourself up to have the best outcome possible so you're not high risk during that pregnancy. And I will tell you, sadly, I pick up breast cancer much more often than people
Wow.
realize. And we
Wow.
are seeing a lot of breast cancer in young, healthy women. So if
Yes.
you're over the age of 40, take this as your, recommendation. Please go get your mammogram, no matter if you're trying or not trying, because once you're pregnant, we can't do anything. And you might have to make some
Mm-hmm.
really difficult, terrible decisions. So do it ahead of time.
Great. Thank you. A question about CoQ10. It's like the new hot thing. What is it? And
So,
should people go on it, or is it kind of, it doesn't hurt?
so this is kind of funny to talk about with this community because there's only one version of CoQ10 that's kosher that I know of. And there's actually not a lot of kosher CoQ10. And by the way, talk to your rabbi if it's okay to take the non-kosher
Okay.
CoQ10.
Okay.
Um, with that said, CoQ10 is a really fascinating supplement. So the idea behind CoQ10 comes from all this really cool research from this guy named Dr. Bob Casper up in Toronto, Canada, who did research in really the mid 90s and early 2000s on supplementing rodents actually with CoQ10. And what he saw was that the IVF outcomes were dramatically improved. We know that CoQ10 is a cofactor, hence cofactor Q10, for cellular division and development. And what we know is that CoQ10 is also a very powerful antioxidant. So it helps reduce
Mm.
all these free radicals. So CoQ10 is kind of like the ubiquitous water that you should just have everywhere. And as you're right, it's like everyone talks about CoQ10, a prenatal vitamin, and CoQ10. The answer is don't overpay for it. And so many patients get suckered into this because they want that baby so badly that they're willing to buy ubiquinone, ubiquinol. I mean, they go nuts. And I'm like, look, just go to Costco.
Mhm.
Like, go buy the cheapest one. Again, that's not the kosher one, but go buy the cheapest one because it probably doesn't matter. And the human body can't really absorb more than 300 milligrams a day. So
Mm.
CoQ10 is not the wonder supplement, but it's a powerful supplement to add into your regimen. The most powerful
Is-
supplement, though, single most powerful, is the food you eat. And so
mhm.
I tell patients all the time, limit your alcohol, limit your sugar, limit your inflammatory substances that you're eating. For some patients, by the way, that means avoiding something called nightshades. And this is something really interesting. And if you talk to a nutritionist, you might find that you're hypersensitive to things like tomatoes and cherries and eggplant and other dark skinned vegetables and fruits. And if you're sensitive to those and they're causing indigestion and they're causing acid, you might not be absorbing all of your other nutrients as well. And they could be
Wow.
causing more inflammation in your body. So I talk to patients all the time about their nutrition.
I'm like kind of allergic to eggplant, so this works. Uh, okay, I want to talk a little bit about the primary versus secondary piece. I guess specifically for primary, I'm ready to build my family and I want this many children. Do you sometimes recommend IVF if, let's say, you're getting married later in life and you want to have a larger family, or is it more, let's get you pregnant today, we'll deal with it one at a time? I know that's kind of a complicated question, but I
No,
thought I would.
it's a beautiful question. because you actually get to ask a patient for probably one of the first times in his or her life, what's your dream?
Mm.
And it's amazing. Everyone has a different story. Now, look, we're not supposed to count our children, right? We're not supposed to say exactly how many children we want. So I kind of let people ballpark it. And, if I'm
Mhm.
talking to like a black hat from Borough Park, I know the answer is that they're going to want to have as many as they can. But if you're
Mhm.
talking to someone who's a little more modern, they might say my dream family might be somewhere between 3 and 4 children. And if she's 37 and she says to me she dreams of 3 to 4 children, I will say to her, let's do IVF up front, not for kid
Mhm.
number one, but to
Mhm.
bank embryos for the future.
Mhm.
Because here's the biggest issue. And I don't care what community you're in and where you live and how old you are. The patients who cry the most in the office are patients with secondary infertility.
Mm.
Because the story goes something like this: first kid, first try, just happened. It felt like a miracle. Now they desperately want a second child, and it's just not working. So they talk to their mothers, they talk to their girlfriends, and everyone tells them the exact same terrible advice: just relax. It happened the first time, it'll happen again. Or, you're already so lucky you have such a beautiful child. What more could you be asking for? You already have one. But what I
Mhm.
remind patients is that secondary infertility psychologically is very different than primary infertility. With primary
Yep.
infertility, your goal is to start your family and to change your names, to become mom and to become dad. With secondary infertility, it is the most selfless thing you could be doing because you're trying to give your child a sibling. You're not doing this for you. You're doing this for your child. And you're doing this for your family that you dream of having. And when people tell you just to relax or just to be happy enough, it is like a dagger in the heart continuously. So I will tell you that psychologically, secondary infertility is hard. And for many people, it's a real emotional roller coaster, especially when the first one happens so easily.
Yeah, certainly. And I was talking about that in the beginning of the live that women with secondary infertility sometimes it's like this heightened sense of pride and guilt both, right? Pride and shame. And I find that those women have a harder time reaching out for help, actually. For primary, it's so acute. The terror is so huge. But the secondary clients kind of feel like I could do this. I got this. I don't want to, be in a position on anyone because I want to have a second, third, fourth, fifth to sixth child. And just, I always want to reassure them, like the support is here no matter what number child this is. And we want to help you achieve your dreams, like you mentioned. Again, the secondary piece also brings up, I guess, prior medical issues that you may have or prior pregnancies and how that might weigh in here. Can you speak to that a bit?
Absolutely. So the best predictor of the future is the past. And so I always take a really good birth history and a really good pregnancy history from every patient. Now, what's interesting is some patients don't even realize that something happened during their pregnancy or after their pregnancy. So, for example, you give birth and then all of a sudden you spike a fever. And then you go home from the hospital on antibiotics because you had endometritis. Sometimes that endometritis can set you up for infertility later in life. And so, quite often, patients may not think that this was relevant, and they may not have actually talked to their OBGYN about their tenderness. Or people don't even say, like, they have pain with intercourse after giving birth, and they don't even think
Mhm.
about these things. Or as women get older, there's a higher instance of developing fibroids and polyps. And sometimes after giving birth, people sometimes have a fibroid or a polyp that develops because they're just older, right? We know 1/3 of all women over the age of 35 will develop a fibroid in their life. And so what happens is that things change, but that birth history is so important and that pregnancy history is so important. And the number one thing that I have to tell patients that they hate me for, like when patients get so annoyed, they're like so fatouched, they're like, I can't believe you just said that, is I tell them to wait for a healthy interval between pregnancies,
Mm.
especially if they had a C-section. I really want them to wait 9 months to a year before their next embryo transfer or trying again. And the reason is that because there could be a life-threatening complication. You can have a uterine rupture that can happen in pregnancy. And you need to be a mother to the child that you have before the child that you want next. And so you have to make sure that they're set up for success and you have to keep them healthy throughout the pregnancy. So I always tell patients, you had a vaginal delivery, 6 to 9 months is before we try again. You had a C-section, 9 to 12 months. And if you're having trouble after 3 or 4 months, I don't care how old you are, let's just get you checked out.
Mhm. Um, do some of the other fertility issues also get worse with age, like endometriosis and PCOS? Is it like this, or is it
So it's kind of like this. Um,
okay?
Endometriosis is one of the weird things that does not get worse in pregnancy. So even though endometriosis responds to estrogen, in pregnancy, it doesn't grow. But once you deliver and the HCG goes out of your system, it gets worse. PCOS tends to get better. And for all of the women out there with PCOS, typically, if you have PCOS, you're going to be able to have better fertility later in life. So those are the women who still have a really good egg count at 41, 42, 43. So even the
Mhm.
thing that tortured you in your 20s could be your best friend in your 40s.
Wow, it's wild. The quality is not always the same, right? I guess with PCOS, but we're
Quality is directly related to your age. And so we know that as you get older, just your risk of chromosomal abnormalities goes down. But it's interesting. I just was watching in the comments that one of my favorite patients made a note. And, there are many patients who are in your community, who are your followers, who I see as patients, who were told by another doctor to either just give up, it's not going to happen, to move on to donor egg, donor sperm, whatever it is, use a carrier, gestational surrogacy, whatever. I hope people have a takeaway from tonight that where there's a will, there's a way. And wherever your community is or wherever your network is, they're there to support you. And of course, your organization is willing to support people where they are. And so if you're not happy with what a doctor tells you, I mean, we live in New York City. There's like a fertility doctor next to every Starbucks.
so true.
Like you can go, and there's lots of amazing doctors. I'm not the only one. There's a ton of them. And so go and get an opinion. And if you don't like that opinion, get a second opinion. But don't go home and be alone and feel like you're isolated and like there's no one there for you, because there's a lot of us who are willing to advocate for you to help you achieve your goal.
Amazing. Okay, we did a lot of talk about women over 35. Talk to me about men over 35. Do they have what's their magic number? Why does
So,
it never matter as much how old they
so,
are, you know?
so we think the magic age for men is somewhere around 45, 46.
Mhm.
And here's what happens is that as a guy gets older, the first thing that they see changing in their semen parameters is that the volume goes down. So the amount of actual semen that's there goes down. The concentration tends to stay the same. The motility tends to stay the same. The shape or morphology is usually the same, but the volume goes down. Also, as guys get older, because their testosterone starts to go down, right? We talked about this andropause that men start to go through, their libido goes down. And so we start to see that more men might have actual sexual problems where they might need some help. They might need a medication. They might need something to help them actually be able to have sex. But here's the one thing that no one talks about with men. As men get older, they take more medications. And
Mm.
as they take more medications, there's more impact on their sperm. And believe it or not, most internal medicine doctors don't know anything about fertility, nor do they want to
Shocking.
know anything.
Shocking.
Shocker. Yet they give guys all these drugs, right? Every guy who's single, who's 29, I guarantee for any woman on here who's going on a date tonight and the guy is 29, he's on Propecia because he's scared of losing his hair. Like it's just everywhere. But I guarantee that the guy who's on Propecia wasn't counseled by the person
Mm.
prescribing it about the impact on semen parameters. And that's something to talk about. So you have to really think about that. As a guy gets older, sure, the volume goes down, the testosterone goes down, the sex drive can go down, the libido goes down, but also the number of medications go up. And those medications can have implications and effects on someone's actual performance or the health of the sperm. Number two,
Great.
women are amazing at preventative health care. They go to the
Mm.
gynecologist once a year. They get their pap smears. They get their general health checkups. Guys are awful, right? Like they literally do nothing and like take no responsibility for their own health. So what I say to every guy, and I've said this to all of my friends, if you're single or married, I don't care, go get a semen analysis. Because the worst thing you can do is to struggle with infertility and for you guys not to know what's the cause. When you have data, you can do anything. If you have the data in front of you, you can seek help, you can prepare yourself, you can figure out what to do, you can seek a treatment, something like that. So go to a doctor, and it's okay for a guy to get a semen analysis on his own. There's a million places. And I send people all the time to Mays Laboratories, to ReproTech that's in New York City, California Cryobank. You can come to my office. You can go to, someone just mentioned Extend, you can go see Josh Klein's office. I mean, go to Eric Foreman's office at Columbia, like any of us, because with information is power, and guys should know what their semen parameters are. Third, with everything else going on in the world, I think if we were to do this conversation 10 years from now, we're going to find that a guy's semen analysis is just a marker of health. If they have high blood pressure, if they have pressure problems, if they have diabetes, if they have peripheral vascular disease, if they have other problems, it's probably going to be found that it pops up first in their semen analysis. So why are we ignoring this data point? We should get every man tested who's willing to be tested.
Wild. That I've never heard before, and it's super interesting. Okay, this is my last question, and then maybe we could see if anybody else has any questions,
Sure.
and you could let me know if there's anything that we missed here. Okay, so we talked about the increase in chromosomal abnormalities and miscarriages. How does reproductive technology help with miscarriages potentially? And is there any increase in genetic issues? And when do you recommend doing that testing?
Great question. So genes and Jews are a big topic.
We're Sephardic. We're Sephardic.
Right? But they're still a big topic.
Oh,
because, you know, in the Sephardic...
We got off the hook for a while.
You did, but you didn't.
Exactly.
And the problem is that we have this bizarre preconceived notion in America that every Jew has Tay-Sachs. And we're like, we just got to get screened for Tay-Sachs and we'll be fine. Well, guess what? It actually has one of the lowest carrier frequencies that you'll ever see. And in the Ashkenazi Jewish population, what you see quite often is hearing loss. So there's a gene for hearing loss called GJB2 that's very common. And what you see frequently in the Ashkenazi and Sephardic populations is something called a congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH. And in these populations of patients, because we tend to reproduce with only our own, right? Ashkenazis are with Ashkenazis, Sephardics are with Sephardics, and, you know, are you LA or Great Neck? You pick, but whatever. But like, you know, they tend to all be the same communities. These genes are preserved. And so when we talk about genetics, it's highly complicated because the first genetic test is the one before you're ever pregnant. It's the one before you ever try. And that's called carrier screening. And your OBGYN or your internal medicine doctor can do that for you. And that's a comprehensive test looking for anywhere from 200 to 450 conditions where you want to make sure you don't overlap. Because if you overlap, there's a 25% chance you'll have a child with a debilitating birth defect or disability. Then there's the genetics of IVF. So when people go through in vitro fertilization, they frequently say, if I want to reduce my miscarriage rate, what can I do? And we tell them the only way to do that is to test the embryos before you put it back. So to know if it's chromosomally normal or abnormal. That's called PGT, or pre-implantation genetic testing. So there's PGT-A, which is aneuploidy, looking for the chromosomes. There's PGT-M, which is looking for these diseases that come from the carrier screening. There's PGT-SR, which is looking for structural rearrangement. And then there's PGT-P, which is the most controversial one, which is looking for personality traits. And so that's the stuff with height and eye color and, you know, all that stuff, which
we're not there yet.
I don't support that because the technology is not there. With that said, I tell patients all the time that if it were my wife or my daughter, I would do PGT-A every time I do IVF because it helps reduce the risk of a miscarriage. Because every miscarriage that you have will set you back a certain amount of time and emotionally set you back. It's not a guarantee of a good pregnancy, but it's the best way you can prevent a miscarriage from happening by knowing that it's chromosomally normal. Then, in pregnancy, there's genetic testing. There's genetic testing that happens at the 10-week time with a blood test called non-invasive prenatal testing. Then there's genetic testing that can happen at 13 weeks called a CVS, or chorionic villus sampling. And then there's genetic testing that can happen at 17 or 18 weeks called an amniocentesis. And there's someone who I know the community all knows, Andre Rebarber, who's amazing, from MFM Specialist.
My doctor.
And I mean, everyone's doctor. I mean, he did my wife's CVS, he did my wife's amnio. He said it the best that I've always remembered. And by the way, I've known Andre and Sam and that whole group since 2004. So literally 21 years. And Andre says it best, which is each test lets you zoom in better. So the first test that you do for the embryo is a high level. The next one with the blood test, a little bit more. The CVS, you're really dialing in, but the amnio is the gold standard. And that's the one that gives you the most information. So what I always tell patients is you don't have to do all of it, but just understand you're assuming risks by not doing some of it. And that the risks of not doing it are typically greater than the risks of doing it, right? Every patient who's pregnant at 45 goes, I'm not having an amniocentesis. I don't want to lose the baby. And you tell them that their chance of miscarriage from a chromosomal abnormality is much higher than the 1 in 1,000 risk of having, a problem with the amnio. And if you go to someone like Andre, like the chance of miscarriage is probably well below 1 in 2,000. So it's much, much rarer.
Awesome. And I guess my question also, follow up to that, is there is an increase in chromosomal abnormalities as women age, but there's no increased risk of, that 25% remains 25% if you have, a carrier genetic. Yeah.
Right. So what happens is that as a woman gets older, her chance of miscarriage directly increases related to her health. So as you get older, you have a higher chance of having high blood pressure and something called preeclampsia later in pregnancy. You have a higher rate of having fibroids or having irregular implantations. Like the other stuff of life that happens is what complicates it. And so I hope people take away from our conversation tonight that for men, part of the reason the sperm counts look different is because guys look different as they get older. They're taking more medicines. Maybe they're a little bit chubbier. Maybe they're not as healthy and fit. Maybe they're a little too comfortable in their marriage and they stopped working out, whatever. For women, we can't change age, right? It's the one variable I can never change. So as you're getting older, your chance of miscarriage is going up. Your chance of problems is going up. Your egg count's going down. So you do things to help prevent the other things from happening. Being healthier, being smarter about it, making sure you're prepped to have the best cycle possible.
Awesome. This was amazing. I don't know. Is there anything you want to add before we finish for the night? Because we are a few minutes over. So I don't.
So the one thing I want to leave is what is important to know about the communities is that there is no shame in having infertility. And there's no shame in asking for help. And no matter how you want to ask for help, you can do it. That might be bringing a friend to your first appointment to just have another set of ears. I cannot tell you how powerful it is to have your best friend next to you. Sometimes it's not your husband. It's just your best friend. Just to take notes for you, just to listen. Everyone needs an advocate. Your organization unbelievably advocates for people and supports people. But it doesn't have to be just your mother or your sister or your sister-in-law. It can be your friend. It can be your colleague. Also, ask your doctor if you can record the visit. All the time I remind people, you have a phone in your pocket. It has a voice recorder on it. Just talk to me and just listen and let your phone do the writing. And now with all this crazy chat GPT, whatever stuff, it can put it all into words, right? Like you can get all the words there. But just go to the appointment, with open ears, open eyes, and take your data and act on it.
Fabulous. Fabulous. I really, really enjoyed this talk. I gained a lot and I know a lot already, but this was really fantastic. I really appreciate your time. And Dr. Brian Levine, I mean, like a round of applause for this. It's a silent round of applause here, but we really, really appreciate your time and expertise and look forward to working together in the future.
Well, thank you so much. And I want you to know that, I am proud to be a Jewish doctor. And I am proud to be part of the Jewish community of physicians. And when I built my lab at CCRM New York, one of the most important things that I did was I reached out to the support organizations and I asked them to come tour it before I finished the build out. And I said to them, where can you do observation comfortably? And I wanted to have a lab that had observation that was part of the workflow. Because I don't know if you know this or not, that in New York, frequently IVF labs will say we don't allow observers because they mess with everything, they get in the way, it's a problem. Instead, I did the opposite. I said, I want to build a kosher lab, which by the way, doesn't really exist. But a kosher lab in my mind was an IVF lab that welcomed people in there to be able to do an observation so that people could feel more comfortable and in a safer space. So for anyone who's out there who wants to know, does Brian Levine or CCRM New York or any of my other amazing partners offer observation? The answer is always yes. And most importantly is they always have a place that's willing to listen to them.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. Really, we appreciate it. The Jewish world appreciates you, and certainly SBH Fertility does. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming on tonight.
Have a great evening, and thank you so
Have a good
much.
night, everybody.
Thank you.